We begin with that historic settlement in the Dominion voting system's defamation lawsuit against Fox News.
The two sides agreed to a $787.5 million settlement just hours after the jury was seated for the high-profile trial. Dominion originally sought $1.6 billion, saying the network defamed the company for pushing conspiracy theories about the 2020 presidential election. Following the news, Fox released a statement saying, "We are pleased to have reached a settlement of our dispute with Dominion Voting Systems. We acknowledge the court's rulings findings, certain claims about Dominion to be false. This settlement reflects Fox's continued commitment to the highest journalistic standards." Dominion CEO John Polis also addressed reporters after this agreement was reached.
Fox has admitted to telling lies about Dominion that caused enormous damage to my company, our employees, and the customers that we serve. Nothing can ever make up for that.
Let's bring in NBC News correspondent Emily Aketa in Wilmington, Delaware, for all the latest on this. We're also joined by NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalas. Good morning to both of you. Emily, how did both sides come to this agreement, and what is each side saying about it?
Well, I'll tell you this. A lot has transpired since I last talked to you yesterday morning. The jury selection played out. That process played out yesterday morning. The jury was seated, 12 jurors, 12 alternates, and then everyone broke for lunch. Then we were supposed to return to the courtroom for the start of the trial. Opening statements set to get underway around 1:30 p.m. So everyone filed back into the courtroom, back into the media overflow room for opening statements that were delayed by, at first, it was a few minutes. We didn't think anything of it. Those minutes turned into hours, fueling speculation around what could have caused such a prolonged delay. Well, we got our answer shortly before 4 p.m. The judge and the jury re-entered the courtroom, and it was a brief announcement. The judge told everyone that the parties had settled and resolved the case. He thanked the lawyers, he thanked the jurors, and everyone exited. An abrupt end to what would have been a high-stakes trial that could have gone for 5 to 6 weeks, bringing names like and high-profile figures like Rupert Murdoch, Sean Hannity, Tucker Carlson to the stand. Now that is no longer the case. Fox's legal team bypassed the media, released that statement you read earlier, and Dominion's team taking to the courthouse steps right behind me, really breaking down what the huge figure, the nearly $800 million settlement stands for. Take a listen here.
For us, this case has always been about exposing the truth and holding those who knowingly spread lies accountable.
Over 2 years ago, a torrent of lies swept Dominion and election officials across America into an alternative universe of conspiracy theories.
Now, should Dominion have continued into trial, they would have had to prove that Fox acted with something called actual malice, that Fox knowingly aired false claims about election fraud allegations, or at least acted with reckless disregard. Guys?
So, Danny, I want to bring you in here because notably they settled at only half, less than half of what they initially sued for, $1.6 billion. So what's the advantage of Fox settling before opening arguments even begin?
The major advantage is the same advantage had they settled months and months and months ago, which is they don't put critical people in the Fox chain of command on the stand and let the bloodletting continue. Look, I think Fox made a bit of a mistake here. They adhered to an old school mentality for defendants in civil cases, which is, and the insurance companies drive this thinking too, which is wait until the absolute last minute to settle. That's magical thinking. Maybe something will happen. But more importantly, you hold on to your money as long as you can. The insurance company can invest it, earn interest on it, whatever the case may be. But the other incentive is that they don't want to encourage other would-be plaintiffs to sue to get the idea that, oh, this is a defendant that rushes to settle a case as soon as it's filed. It's an old way of thinking. It may work with run-of-the-mill motor vehicle accident claims or things that nobody ever hears about in the news. That's not this case. The stakes were too high. It would have been valuable to Fox to settle this even for the same amount early on, before all these depositions were taken and before all these facts were out in the public.
Fascinating. Emily, where does each side go from here?
Well, I'll tell you, it appears that there are more legal matters on the horizon for both sides here. Fox still facing a similar defamation lawsuit from another voting technology company called Smartmatic. This one with demanding even more money than Dominion did, $2.7 billion. Fox has denied the allegations and called the demanded damages absolutely outrageous. For Dominion, it has more pending lawsuits on the horizon. It is suing several individuals, including Trump allies, also several news outlets. So in other words, guys, more to follow, more to come.
And Danny, I want to ask you about something a little more in the weeds, because a source familiar with the situation tells NBC News that the special master's investigation into whether or not Fox News complied with their discovery obligations will not move forward. Is this because of the settlement?
Yeah, nobody cares anymore. 48 hours ago, the plaintiffs' attorneys would have felt very strongly about getting to the bottom of what kinds of discovery games Fox was playing. Now, they don't have that incentive. They've won a gigantic settlement, the incentive to go forward and find out whether Fox hid discovery. The plaintiffs don't care. If the plaintiffs don't care that much, then probably the special master and the judge aren't as interested either. And of course, Fox is certainly not interested in anyone investigating it further to find out whether it did or did not play hide discovery.
What are the greater implications here for the media world? I mean, before this settlement, Fox had said Dominion was looking for a financial windfall, and the real victim here would be the First Amendment. So do you think other media companies have been watching this or are actually kind of glad that Fox settled and this didn't go through the trial, potentially changing something?
Yes, because when a case settles like this, it doesn't really have any preclusive value. In other words, it's not precedent in the way it might be if there was a verdict and then that verdict was upheld on appeal, and then you have an appellate court issuing an opinion on an issue of law saying, hey, in defamation cases, this is the rule. Or, for example, the New York Times v. Sullivan standard is still the rule. A lot of folks wondered if the Times v. Sullivan standard, and that's the one that says that you can hold a media company liable, for example, if there's a false statement and they were reckless about its falsity. That's been the standard for many decades. A lot of folks have criticized that standard. We'll never know, at least as a result of this litigation, whether that standard could have been tested or the extent to it. It remains. It lives to fight another day, if that's what it does. And we've really created no precedential value, really just spiritual value for all those other would-be plaintiffs who are interested in suing Fox.
Spiritual value. All right, Danny Savalas and Emily Aketa, thank you both.
And the 21-year-old airman accused of the worst U.S. intelligence breach in years will appear in a federal courthouse in Boston later today. That's where a judge will decide whether Jack Teixeira will remain in custody ahead of his trial. For more, we're joined by CNBC senior White House correspondent Kayla Tausche in Washington. Kayla, thank you so much for being here. So first off, can you just take us through today's hearing and what we should expect?
Well, we expect that prosecutors are going to provide a little bit more evidence to underpin an argument that Airman Teixeira should remain in custody until his trial because he either poses a national security risk or a flight risk based on the severity of the documents that he has exposed. And the fact that the U.S. at this point still does not know the breadth of the leak and whether it is contained at this time. Now, what we don't know is exactly how much evidence, new evidence, prosecutors will bring to the table here, or whether they will save some of the most damning information or the information that they have for a future trial or for a future indictment. But we do expect that they will be making that argument that Airman Teixeira should not be out of jail while he awaits his trial, as is custom in cases like this in the past.
So, Kayla, given the severity of this crime, do we expect there's any chance that Teixeira is released before the start of the trial?
No, it's highly unlikely. You may remember back during similar leaks by Chelsea Manning and Reality Winner, they were both held in pretrial detention, in some cases up to a year before their trial. They were both ultimately convicted on charges of espionage. So at least in the handful of cases that we have similar to this one, there has been no pretrial release.
And Kayla, what about the White House? What are they saying ahead of this hearing? Obviously, this leak had bad implications for them as well.
And it still has implications that are being sized up by the White House and across the administration, including the Pentagon, which is launching a review of exactly how damaging this leak has been to national security. But the White House yesterday just reaffirmed President Biden's concern that the leaks happened and noted that President Biden was the one who has been initiating some of these communications with allies, directing all levels of communication with allies to explain to them what happened and what happens from here, as well as undergoing a top-to-bottom review of the national security protocol. So certainly the White House is noting that President Biden is concerned, but also noting that he's doing what he can to try to contain it.
Important analysis. Kayla Tausche, thank you so much.
An upstate New York man is expected to appear in court later today to face murder charges.
Yeah, police say he shot and killed a 20-year-old woman after the car she was riding in accidentally pulled into the wrong driveway. NBC News national correspondent Miguel Almaguer has more.
Lost in rural upstate New York, 20-year-old Kaylin Gillis was shot and killed Saturday night when the SUV she was in accidentally pulled into the wrong driveway. It happened in remote Washington County when the sheriff says Gillis and her friends, who were in 2 vehicles and a motorcycle, couldn't find a nearby home. As the SUV was turning around, investigators say Kevin Monahan walked out of his home and fired 2 shots at the vehicle.
Why did the suspect tell you he opened fire?
He has not given us any motive. He's not given us a reason as to why he felt necessary to fire. They turned around and were in the process of leaving when the shots were fired.
The sheriff says Gillis, who was in the front passenger seat, and her 3 friends never got out of the car and never posed a threat to Monahan, who's charged with murder. After the shooting, driving through the secluded town of Hebron, the group reached an area with cell phone service and called 911.
They were young kids, like anywhere across this country. They were on a weekend night looking for a friend's house, and it was just a senseless and it's a tragic incident.
That was Miguel Almaguer reporting, and Monahan has pleaded not guilty in this case. His attorney tells NBC News the shooting was a series of errors which resulted in a tragedy.
The man accused of shooting 16-year-old Ralph Yarl is set to be arraigned today on 2 felony charges. 84-year-old Andrew Lester was released from custody yesterday after posting bail. Now the community is calling for justice as Yarl begins his long road to recovery. NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa is in Kansas City, Missouri with details.
Good morning. After turning himself into police yesterday and hours later posting $200,000 bail, 84-year-old Andrew Lester will face a judge for the first time this afternoon. This as people in Kansas City and beyond rally around a 16-year-old boy who's just beginning to heal.
What do we want? Justice! What do we want? Now!
From crowds in downtown Kansas City.
Oh my God, this is somebody that I know.
We love you, Ralph! We love you, Ralph!
To 1,500 high school students walking out to honor their classmate and demand justice.
We support you, Ralph. We want to be there for you.
84-year-old Andrew Lester set to be arraigned today on felony charges, including first-degree assault for allegedly shooting the black teen boy who rang his doorbell Thursday. 16-year-old Ralph Yarl now recovering at home.
Ralph is doing really, really well. He's loving the love that he's getting from everyone.
The bullets to his arm and head, families say, leaving him with a traumatic brain injury and a cracked skull. The family's attorney says the high school junior and marching band standout was trying to pick up his younger brothers when he accidentally went to the wrong home. Prosecutors say there's a racial component in the case. Civil rights attorney Ben Crump pushing for hate crime charges.
What are we coming to in America when young people hit the wrong doorbell and you profile and shoot them?
According to court documents, Andrew Lester told detectives that he saw a black male, approximately 6 feet tall, pulling on the exterior storm door handle, believing someone was attempting to break in and that he was scared to death. Ralph's family says he only rang the doorbell and never tried to break in.
Ralph says that he was shot through the screen door at point-blank range.
The family says Ralph, wounded, ran for his life, begging neighbors for help, one ordering him to lie on the ground and put his hands up. James Lynch, hearing the commotion, says he ran and waited with the teen until paramedics arrived.
To lay there in the street alone and scared and bleeding, that's awful.
According to those court documents, shortly after the shooting, Andrew Lester was, quote, visibly upset and, quote, repeatedly expressed concern for the victim. We are expecting his arraignment today to be virtual, and prosecutors say he faces a maximum of life in prison. Back to you.
Maggie Vespa, thank you.
And this morning, an investigation is underway after a deadly parking garage collapse in New York City. This is what it looked like in Lower Manhattan yesterday. Following the collapse, one person was killed and 5 others hurt. Witnesses say they heard a loud noise and then a dark cloud of smoke. The entire roof of the structure appeared to crack and cave in, leaving cars literally hanging in the balance. Firefighters were on the scene before rescuers used both high-tech drones and emergency response robotic dogs to search for people trapped in the rubble of the unstable building.
All right, let's switch gears here and get a check at your morning news now weather. Strong winds, even hail targeting parts of the country today.
Yeah, so joining us now to dig into this is NBC News meteorologist Angie Lassman. Angie, good morning.
Morning, guys. Yeah, we've got a couple of days where we're going to have to deal with the potential to see some of these stronger storms. They do include those damaging winds and the large hail, and we, of course, can't rule out some isolated tornadoes. So here's the lay of the land. On satellite and radar, you can see some rain working into parts of the Midwest and into the northern plains. We also have snow. Talk about late season snow falling in places like the Dakotas, stretching out into northern portions of Wisconsin. That's what you wake up to in those areas through the day today. But by the time we get into the late evening hours and especially into the overnight hours, we're going to likely see this front working to the east and bringing the potential for those stronger storms. So where does it include? Anywhere where you see that brighter kind of orange shade, that's where we have a slight risk. So that means it's slightly elevated for us to see the potential for some of these severe storms to develop. That does include things like large hail. We're talking 2 inches or larger, even up to 3 inches in size. That, of course, damaging for cars and such. And we also will see the wind gusts potentially reaching up to 60 miles per hour. And like I mentioned, the isolated tornadoes, can't rule those out. It does include Kansas City, Salina, Wichita, Oklahoma City, and as far south as Wichita Falls, Texas. So if you live in those areas through the afternoon and evening hours today, you're going to want to stay alert. Now, that system continues moving east. So that means that there's some folks that are going to be next up as we get into tomorrow for, once again, the potential to see strong to even severe storms. The showers and thunderstorms will develop along that cold front as it tracks to the east. And again, where you see those brighter oranges, Dallas, Austin, stretching into parts of Little Rock, areas that really have already been hard hit so far this season, will once again have the potential to see some of that hail and the damaging wind. I do want to stress the tornado threat is much lower, but of course we cannot rule out the potential to see a few of those isolated tornadoes, but it does look like more of a hail event. Either way, staying connected is going to be key over the next couple of days, because even by Friday, we're not done with the severe threat just yet. It just transitions a little farther south along the Gulf Coast, where we'll see parts of Louisiana, Texas, extending into still Arkansas and Mississippi for the potential to see once again some of those stronger storms. Now, we also have the potential for some really heavy rainfall with this. So we do have a flash flood risk that's going to stay with us at least through Saturday morning, with heavy rain on the way as that system moves to the east. We're talking anywhere from 1 inch to 2 inches, even isolated amounts up to 3 inches by the time this is all said and done through the end of the week. Some of those higher amounts are going to be focused towards Little Rock, towards Memphis, Alexandria, Shreveport. Some of those locations that already have really saturated grounds, we likely could see some flooding concerns in those areas. And for a couple days as the system slowly but surely makes its way out to the east. Now, cold air has really been in place. We woke up to freeze alerts for many across parts of the Midwest, and you can see why. Detroit sitting at 59 degrees right now, Marquette into the 30s. We have 48 for Buffalo and Hartford at 57 degrees later this afternoon. Notice where our temperatures go by later into the afternoon tomorrow. We'll see Cincinnati hit the low 80s, Pittsburgh into the mid 80s. We're running 20 degrees almost above normal by tomorrow. A bit of a different story than what we deal with today. Washington, D.C. could hit 90 degrees by the time we get to Friday. So, don't get used to it, because by Saturday it's 80, which doesn't sound too bad, but mid-60s arrive on Sunday. And if you live in Chicago, a little bit of weather whiplash for you too. Friday, mid-60s, but the 40s return just in time for your Saturday and your Sunday plans. Guys, this is going to be, one of those things where I think people are very confused about what to wear, because we've got all of it on the table.
Or caught unaware completely.
Yes.
Yeah. In the cold.
Yeah.
Angie Lassman, thank you so much.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.